The news broke at dawn, and for a moment the entire nation seemed to hold its breath. A single sentence rolled across television screens, phone alerts, and radio stations. Beginning today, every meal, every grocery item, every bite of food in the United States is free, forever. No coupons, no complicated sign-ups, no hidden fees. From the smallest corner bodega to the largest supermarket chain, every shelf now carried a price tag of $0. Farmers markets, five-star restaurants, fast food drive-thrus, all declared the same message: take what you need, pay nothing. At first, disbelief filled the air. Morning commuters double-checked their phones. Shop owners stared at government bulletins in stunned silence. But when the president addressed the country in a live broadcast, the impossible became real. Food is a human right, the president said. As of this morning, no one in America will ever go hungry again. Within minutes, people poured into streets and stores. Families who had once rationed every grocery run pushed carts with wide eyes, unsure whether to celebrate or panic. Parents hugged children while grabbing fresh fruit and warm bread. Elderly neighbors stood in produce aisles, weeping quietly as they picked the ripest peaches, without glancing at a price tag. Farmers and restaurant owners felt a different rush, one of uncertainty. How would they pay workers? Who would cover costs of seeds, transport, refrigeration? Government officials assured them that a new national fund would reimburse every supplier, but the details were hazy. Economists warned of shortages if production slowed before the system found its rhythm. Meanwhile, the nation's mood shifted in ways no one predicted. Soup kitchens and food bank volunteers, long used to endless demand, suddenly had quiet halls. Children who had skipped breakfast because of empty cupboards sat down to full plates. For the first time in generations, the phrase food insecurity began to fade from headlines, yet questions sprouted as quickly as excitement. Would people hoard goods? Would farmers overproduce or cut corners, knowing they were guaranteed payment? Could the government truly finance a country where meals for more than 300 million citizens carried no cost? By nightfall, highways were jammed with trucks rushing produce to city centers. Restaurants stayed open past midnight, offering free multi-course dinners to lines that wrapped around city blocks. In rural towns, neighbors gathered at community tables, sharing feasts and stories as if the entire nation were one enormous family reunion. America had stepped into a future no economist's model had ever dared to predict. In a single day, the very idea of buying food, a practice as old as markets themselves, had vanished. And as the moon rose over grocery stores with unlocked doors and restaurants giving away steaming plates, the country faced a question both thrilling and unsettling. What does life look like when the most basic human need no longer carries a price? In the weeks that followed, the United States entered a period of breathtaking transformation. Grocery aisles once filled with quiet shoppers now hummed with conversation and laughter. Without checkout lines or credit card swipes, people moved freely, selecting only what they needed, or sometimes far more. At first, pantries overflowed as families tested the limits of this new abundance. Yet, after the initial excitement, many households settled into calmer patterns, discovering that when food is limitless, hoarding loses its appeal. Farmers and food producers faced the greatest uncertainty. Federal officials unveiled an emergency reimbursement program, promising to pay growers, ranchers, and distributors directly from a newly created national food fund. Tractors rolled across endless fields of corn and wheat as before, but farmers admitted they were planting on. "We are feeding a nation without invoices," one Iowa grower said, and trusting the government to keep its word. The restaurant industry experienced an unexpected renaissance. With menus free of prices, chefs experimented boldly. Michelin star kitchens offered elaborate tasting menus to anyone who showed up, while tiny diners served endless stacks of pancakes to crowds that never stopped coming. The concept of fine dining blurred, as people from every income level sat side by side, tasting flavors once reserved for the wealthy. Economic ripples spread far beyond the dinner table. With food budgets erased, families redirected money toward housing, education, and safe. Low-wage workers suddenly had room to breathe. Credit card debt linked to grocery bills plummeted. But grocery chains and food manufacturers worried about long-term stability. If government payments lagged, would production slow? Economists debated whether the system could remain solvent once the novelty wore off. Socially, the impact was profound. Hunger-related crime, shoplifting, petty theft, even some drug offenses tied to desperation dropped sharply. Schools reported better attendance, and improved concentration among children who now arrived with full stomachs. Community gatherings blossomed, parks filled with free potlucks, where strangers shared dishes without the awkwardness of splitting a bill. Yet challenges surfaced quick. Logistics networks strained under unprecedented demand. Refrigerated trucks logged record miles to keep fresh produce moving, and minor delays sometimes emptied entire city blocks of staples like milk or eggs. Nutritionists worried that unlimited access might encourage unhealthy habits. Sugary snacks disappeared as quickly as fresh vegetables. Public health campaigns sprang up, urging moderation and balance in a world where cost no longer served as a natural break. Debates ignited in Congress over funding. The National Food Fund required billions of dollars each week, covered by a steep new tax on luxury goods and high incomes. Supporters called it a small price for eliminating hunger. Critics warned of runaway deficits and questioned whether citizens should finance unlimited feasts for everyone, regardless of need. Still, the everyday mood across the country was unmistakably lighter. In neighborhoods once scarred by scarcity, children played without the dull ache of hunger. Parents no longer skipped meals to feed their kids. For the first time in American history, the right to eat had become as unquestioned as the right to breathe. A full year passed, and the United States bore little resemblance to the nation it had been before food became free. City skylines glowed with rooftop gardens funded by the National Food Program. Formerly vacant lots transformed into community farms where neighbors, not cash registers, set the rhythm of daily life. What began as a shock had evolved into a new normal: meals without money, abundance without price tags. The economy shifted in unexpected directions, with grocery budgets erased, consumer spending on housing, travel and education surged. Small restaurants thrived as gathering spaces rather than profit engines, supported by government reimbursements and local donations. Many grocery chains reinvented themselves as food distribution hubs, focusing on freshness and variety instead of revenue. Jobs once centered on marketing and pricing pivoted to logistics, quality control, and sustainable farming. Agriculture itself underwent a quiet revolution. The pressure to compete for profit eased, allowing farmers to experiment with soil-friendly methods and climate-resilient crop. Cooperative networks blossomed across states, sharing seeds, machinery, and knowledge without fear of financial ruin. For the first time in generations, decisions about what to plant were guided more by nutrition and ecology than by market speculation. Culturally, the absence of food scarcity reshaped relationships. Family dinners regained their central place in daily life. Schools held open cafeterias where parents and children often ate side by side. Holidays that once strained wallets became joyous. Communal feasts where everyone, regardless of income, brought a dish simply for the pleasure of sharing. The old dividing lines between haves and have-nots softened as meals became a universal, unifying experience. Yet not everything was idyllic. Public health officials observed a rise in diet-related illnesses as some citizens overindulged in rich foods. National education campaigns promoted balanced eating and regular exercise, reminding people that free did not mean limitless indulgence. Economists continued to debate the sustainability of funding a program that required billions of dollars each month. While luxury taxes and high-income brackets covered much of the cost, critics warned that a downturn in the global economy could test the system's resilience. Even so, crime rates linked to hunger stayed historically low, and the psychological weight of food insecurity lifted from millions of households. Children grew up without the quiet anxiety of empty cupboards. Seniors no longer had to choose between buying groceries and paying for medicine. The simple assurance of a guaranteed meal redefined what it meant to be an American citizen. One evening, under strings of lights in a bustling public square, a farmer who once worried about selling enough corn ladled soup beside a former corporate executive. Around them, strangers laughed, musicians played, and no one carried a wallet. It was a scene that captured the essence of a society transformed. When nourishment is free, community becomes the true currency. The experiment that began as a startling announcement had settled into a lasting truth. The United States discovered that when the right to eat is shared by all, the nation grows not only healthier but also more compassionate. Proof that sometimes the most radical change begins with something as simple and as vital as a